Imagine a world where the electricity bill no longer exists, where cars, airplanes, and even rockets travel without consuming a drop of fossil fuel, where no coal plant emits smoke, no oil spill pollutes the oceans, and where the very idea of energy scarcity becomes nothing more than a distant memory. This is the dream of infinite energy that, for the first time in human history, it is closer than ever to becoming reality. For centuries, humanity has sought ways to produce energy more efficiently, from the force of the wind to hydroelectric turbines, from solar panels to nuclear reactors. But all these sources have their limits, whether due to resource availability, environmental impact, or difficulty in scaling. The true holy grail of energy lies in nuclear fusion, the very process that powers the stars in space. Unlike nuclear fission, which is used in our current power plants, fusion does not generate long-lasting radioactive waste, carries no risk of catastrophic explosions, and relies on abundant elements, such as hydrogen, which can even be extracted from seawater. In theory, a small amount of this fuel could power entire cities for months. We are talking about an energy source that is practically unlimited, clean, and safe. But what would the impact on daily life be if we could harness this cosmic power here on Earth? And more importantly, what would be the social, economic, and even political transformations in a world where energy would never again be a problem? Nuclear fusion is undoubtedly one of the greatest scientific promises of our era. It is the same process that has kept the sun shining for billions of years, the merging of light atoms, such as hydrogen, to form heavier atoms, releasing a colossal amount of energy. Unlike fission, used in traditional nuclear power plants, fusion does not split atoms, it combines them. And that difference changes absolutely everything. For fusion to happen, conditions similar to the core of stars must be recreated, temperatures exceeding 100 million degrees Celsius and unimaginable pressures. In laboratories, this is only possible with advanced reactors, such as the tokamak or the stellarator, which use massive magnetic fields to contain the incandescent plasma where fusion occurs. It may sound like science fiction, but experimental facilities already exist, such as the International ITER project in France, which aims to make this a practical reality. The most fascinating aspect is the potential of this technology. Imagine that just a few grams of deuterium and tritium, isotopes of hydrogen, could generate as much energy as tons of coal or oil. And better still, without pollution, without global warming, and without dependence on fossil fuels. It would be as if we bottled a star and used it to power our cities, run our factories, and fuel our technologies. Of course, the challenges are still immense. Reactors currently consume more energy than they produce in their early stages, materials must withstand extreme conditions, and research costs are in the billions. But year after year, progress becomes more solid. Many scientists believe that within the next few decades, fully functioning nuclear fusion power plants will be possible. Mastering this cosmic force would be the greatest energy leap since the discovery of fire. And when the first fusion power plant goes online, humanity will finally gain access to something it has always dreamed of: clean, abundant, and for all practical purposes, infinite energy. Imagine a world where the electricity bill simply doesn't exist anymore, where factories, homes, hospitals, and entire cities are powered by a clean, abundant, and practically free source. This is the scenario nuclear fusion could bring, and its impact on the economy and society would be comparable to a new industrial revolution. Currently, much of the planet's geopolitical and economic relationships revolve around oil, natural gas, and coal. Wars have been fought, empires built, and nations enriched or impoverished because of dependence on these resources. Now imagine a future where all countries have access to practically inexhaustible energy, extracted from seawater or from the abundant lithium in Earth's crust. The global balance would change radically. The power of oil would cease to exist, and countries once considered poor in resources could become energy superpowers. At the individual level, the transformation would be just as profound. Production costs would drop drastically, since energy is one of the main factors in any industrial chain. This could make food, transportation, and technology far more affordable. Electric cars could be charged at almost no cost, factories could produce goods with lower margins, and even seawater desalination, currently expensive and limited, would become feasible on a large scale, ending water scarcity in arid regions. But new challenges would also arise. If energy truly becomes infinite and cheap, How will governments deal with the drastic drop in revenue from fossil fuels? Entire economies, currently sustained by oil and gas exports, would have to reinvent themselves. Moreover, overabundance could create unexpected problems. If the production of goods becomes virtually unlimited, how would that affect the value of human labor, jobs, and even the very concept of scarcity? The social impact would also be immense. Clean and accessible energy for everyone could reduce historical inequalities between rich and poor nations. Isolated communities without access to electricity could experience leaps of development within years. Universal access to energy would open doors to advances in education, healthcare, and quality of life. We are talking about a future where energy would no longer be a privilege, but a universal right, as essential as the air we breathe. The question would no longer be do we have enough energy, but rather how will we use this unlimited energy? If nuclear fusion truly delivers infinite and clean energy, we would not just be solving the problem of electricity, we would be facing the end of scarcity as we know it. Throughout history, humanity has been shaped by the limitation of resources, whether food, fertile land, drinking water, or fuels. The price of everything has always been tied to how much effort and energy were needed to produce it. But in a future of unlimited energy, that logic simply disappears. With abundant electricity, the very nature of the economy could be transformed. Producing food in vertical farms powered by cheap energy could eradicate world hunger. Desalinating oceans on an industrial scale could eliminate the water crisis. Mass manufacturing with 3D printing and robotics, driven by infinite energy, could make clothing, furniture, and even housing extremely affordable. The world would shift from an economy of restriction to one of abundance. This scenario raises the possibility of a post-scarcity society, something that today exists only in science fiction. Imagine a planet where everyone has access to housing, transportation, education, and healthcare, not because the state distributes it or because the market prices it, but because the energy to sustain it all is virtually free. Inequality, which has always had its deepest roots in material and energy scarcity, could be drastically reduced. But the end of scarcity also raises new questions. What motivates human beings in a world where all basic needs are guaranteed? How would work function if much of production were automated and driven by unlimited energy? Perhaps we would witness the birth of a new civilization, one not focused on survival, but on creating, exploring, and expanding. Infinite energy could propel us beyond Earth. The colonization of Mars and other moons in the solar system would no longer be just a distant dream. Fusion-powered ships could travel for decades without worrying about fuel, opening the way for humanity to become an interplanetary species. The very definition of borders and resources would change, since we would no longer be limited to what exists on our planet. This would mark the dawn of a new era of human civilization, an era where energy is no longer a problem, but the engine that drives us to surpass previously unimaginable boundaries. The moment we discover infinite energy, history will no longer be about scarcity, but about limitless possibilities.